By the late 18th century, the East India Company was rapidly absorbing the southern half of the Indian subcontinent. But mapping territory is different from knowing its value. The British suddenly controlled a massive agrarian economy, yet they had zero visibility into the actual crop yields or the productive capacity of the soil. To collect revenue without this knowledge, the company relied on the system they inherited, leasing entire districts to native elites and village headmen to gather taxes on their behalf. This created a multi-tiered hierarchy with the East India Company at the top. Below them sat the Omildars, regional managers who purchased their positions and guaranteed a fixed sum to the British. Under the Omildars was a network of local renters and sub-renters reaching down into individual villages. At the very bottom of this structure was the individual peasant cultivator, the ryot. For a foreign corporation designed to maximize profit, this opaque hierarchy was a dangerous vulnerability. The company outsourced the business of assessment to middlemen who possessed their own localized financial interests. As agricultural wealth moved from the fields to the colonial treasury, the total value shrank at every administrative level. Because intermediaries purchased their positions, they siphoned off capital to cover their initial bribes and enriched themselves long before the remaining funds reached the British. This information asymmetry was deliberate. Intermediaries colluded to hide the true quality of the land and actual crop yields from the British, ensuring they could keep the surplus. To maximize their personal margins, these same renters ruthlessly overassessed the ryots, extorting them with unauthorized fees and forced labor. The fifth report, a parliamentary investigation into the company's affairs, noted that the government was deprived of all means of ascertaining the oppressions practiced on the husbandmen or the frauds committed on their own rights. The farming system proved a failure. It starved the treasury of revenue while destabilizing the agrarian base upon which the entire empire relied. Administrators like Colonel Alexander Reed and Thomas Munro proposed a fix for this revenue crisis: bypass the local elites entirely. They realized that to maximize extraction, the entire middle management layer of renters and amildars had to be deleted. This established the Rayotwari system, a direct relationship between the British collector and the individual peasant. To make this direct assessment work, the British needed to manufacture their own granular data to replace the knowledge hoarded by the village elites. This required a cadastral survey, a massive bureaucratic effort to physically map every field, define its boundaries, and evaluate its agricultural capacity. The records of these surveys captured the real extent of land cultivated and the specific kinds of produce which it yielded. This data allowed the British to convert unpredictable crop shares into a predictable, standardized monetary rent. The survey turned the opaque Indian countryside into a readable, taxable spreadsheet for colonial administrators. Data alone was not enough to secure extraction. The company needed a binding mechanism to formalize this new power dynamic. They introduced the pata, a formalized legal lease granted directly to each cultivator. This document utilized the survey data to specify the extent and quality of his land, defining exact property boundaries. It also locked in the financial expectation for the year, specifying the sum he engaged to pay for it as rent. This paper provided the ryot with legal protection from the unrecorded, arbitrary taxes historically invented by village headmen. To reinforce this, the company issued the Kanunama, a public proclamation circulating the rules of assessment, so the entire village understood the limits of the collector's demands. The pata moved the point of accountability. By bypassing the village elders and dealing directly with the state, the cultivator's legal and economic standing became anchored to British law. Fixed taxation carries a risk in a volatile climate. If a monsoon fails and crops wither, a fixed rent becomes impossible to pay. Under the old system, headmen would squeeze the starving ryots regardless, leading to mass abandonment of fields and collapsed future revenues. The Rayotwari survey solved this by framing the rent not as an absolute demand, but as a maximum assessment. The fifth report confirms that the survey valuation constituted the maximum of assessment. In years of calamity or distress, the system allowed the assessment to be accordingly lowered to match the district's capacity. The company also provided tukavi, direct cash advances from the state treasury to the peasantry. This capital was used to purchase seeds and implements and to hire laborers, ensuring the farm remained productive. Strategic leniency and capital investment protected the long-term revenue potential of the individual ryot, keeping the colonial engine running even through environmental crises. This systemic overhaul met immediate, fierce resistance. By stripping power and income from entrenched feudal elites, the company provoked a violent reaction. In the province of Malabar, this friction turned into active conflict. Displaced military elites, the Rajas and Nayars, hoisted the standard of rebellion, throwing the province into internal disturbance. The company initially attempted to reinstate these native Rajas to collect revenue, but this resulted in massive deficits and widespread chaos. This absolute failure forced the British to pivot away from compromises and double down on direct, militarized administrative control. The Riat Wari system functioned as a pacification tool designed to break the influence of rival feudal powers. While Malabar resisted, the system achieved unprecedented success in the settled districts under Thomas Monro. Monro produced a staggering increase in revenue that proved the efficacy of direct assessment to the company's directors in London. The fifth report records a financial leap in land revenues from roughly 10 lakh pagodas to over 15 lakh. This represents a 50% increase in revenue over Monro's 7-year tenure. This sum was realized with very low failure, proving the direct collection pipeline was practically airtight. This undeniable success provided the proof of concept that justified rolling out direct bureaucratic assessment across the entirety of the Madras Presidency. How did the company extract 50% more wealth without sparking a massive peasant revolt? The surge did not come from raising the individual tax rates on the ryots. Instead, the revenue rapidly grew by completely cutting out intermediary theft and by expanding the total amount of land under cultivation. Secure property rights directly incentivized ryots to expand their farming onto previously untouched wastelands, increasing the total taxable footprint. The system achieved absolute British authority by linking the economic survival and legal rights of the individual peasant directly to the company's bureaucratic machinery.